The opinions and views expressed by individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of this network, their group, or other organization they may be involved with.
I'm looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of Tuesday evening news. Tuesday evening
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psychedelic Reporters for this Tuesday, the 31st, or it's the 1st, I didn't look. Well, anywho, it's episode 1, no, it's 200. We hit the 200 mark here on NOK Network, the video news news podcast. What? Hold on, I'm using Word. Where video news podcast focus on psychedelic medicine being reported. Oh wow. In mainstream media. Shout out to the guys in Dead Ringer from Kirkland Lake, Ontario for the awesome intro track, originally recorded by the Moody Blues with some customized changes for our show. Wow, I am joined by my amazing joint host, Tara Simpson, along with the one and only Bufo Various, who has chosen all of our stories for us. Hello, Tara.
Well, hello, hobbies, and hello, everyone. I'd like to take a minute to introduce Bufo. He's our Sonoran desert toad, or Colorado mud toad. Did you know he emits DMT from his skin? And while that sounds like great fun, park rangers, again, would like to remind everyone, please don't lick the toads.
Don't lick the toads. I am subbing for Todd because he's getting a facelift. But here I am. And guess what? We have exciting news for you. Exciting news that starts out on themarijuanamoment.net. Bringing our first article, Louisiana senators approve bill to create psychedelic therapy pilot program funded by opioid settlement dollars. And this is written by Kyle Yeager.
Yeah, so this is coming from down your neck of the woods there, hobbies.
It sure is.
Yeah, Louisiana senators have approved a bill to create a psychedelic-assisted therapy pilot program using opioid settlement dollars to fund clinical trials aimed at developing alternative treatments such as psilocybin and ibogaine. The legislation from Senator Patrick McMath, Republican, passed a Senate Health and Welfare Committee with amendments on Wednesday. The sponsor said he filed the measure after hearing from military veterans who opened my eyes to this world of psychedelic therapy that they have received, helping him to realize it was a growing movement. The psychedelic program would be overseen by the Louisiana Department of Health, which would be responsible for facilitating clinical trials involving substances that hold therapeutic potential. The bill says that eligible participants would include people with opioid use disorder, co-occurring substance use disorder, and treatment-resistant neurological or mental health conditions. Any studies would need to go through a Federal Food and Drug Administration investigational study drug approval process. Researchers would also need to be permitted by the DEA to conduct trials involving the Schedule I controlled substances. Patients participating in studies would need to go through mental and physical health screenings, and researchers would be also required to develop processes that ensure safety and compliance with adverse event reporting rules, training and licensing for therapists, and policy for tracking and handling the psychedelics. There's also a specific provision in the bill, SB 43, concerning ibogaine, with academic institutions authorized to collaborate in the clinical trials to bolster FDA approval prospects to develop prescription drugs based on the psychedelic. Researchers would also be encouraged to collaborate with institutions into other states that have similar programs in place. If a drug is approved and developed as a result of the pilot program, clinical trials, there would be revenue sharing requirement with 20% of the profits that would go to the state. Other states have passed similar bills to allow for clinical studies performed by universities and hospitals. And this would put Louisiana at the forefront of using these innovative medicines to treat not only our veterans, but individuals impacted by the opioid epidemic, McMath said at Wednesday's committee hearing. With respect to the related laws in the states outside Louisiana, such as Texas and Mississippi, the senator described an amendment that would incorporate into his bill that would follow their models by authorizing Louisiana to participate in a national consortium for ibogaine research and drug development. If ibogaine therapy does gain FDA approval, revenue tied to the intellectual property rights of that drug would go to the consortium, except the 20% specifically earmarked for Louisiana. McMath, who chairs a Senate committee, said there is tremendous opportunity provided by the use of opioid settlement dollars to fund this program. Last year, the senator also sponsored a resolution approved by the full chamber that called for the establishment of a task force to study and make recommendations on the potential therapeutic benefits of psychedelics for veterans.
Yeah, it goes on to talk about, meanwhile, another Louisiana lawmaker introduced a bill to create an adult-use marijuana legalization program in the State Department, whether the reform should eventually be expanded and permanently codified. The Democrat, Representative Candace Newell, who has long championed legislation to end cannabis criminalization and filed a similar legal pilot program measure last session, is sponsoring what's titled the Adult Use Cannabis Pilot Program Regulation and Enforcement Act. Getting the bill across the finish line can prove complicated and conservative legislator. However, Newell's early version of the pilot legislator didn't advance to enactment last year, and lawmakers that session also rejected other marijuana reform proposals, such as one that would have established a tax system to prepare the eventual legalization of adult cannabis. So I'm really excited about this. I see them doing it for the 20%. Like this state, one of the reasons why they do stuff is for money, and it keeps the state going. It keeps the state for the tourism. It keeps them able to work on their shore erosion at the same time. But then, where does all that money go? And in environmental studies, in natural studies like this, in medicine, if you keep the money in that program instead of putting it other places, that program can get stronger. So I have fears that they're feeling, that they're going to start feeding other things. But if they're feeding the state's pocketbooks, they're going to protect the program. And then they showed that with the medical marijuana that already is to date. And so, the prices aren't the best for the economic person because there isn't the price gouging and all that competition like other states. But I mean, they have proof to do natural medicines in a, I guess, responsible-ish way.
Absolutely. I like that they're using money from the opioid settlement fund to fund research on how to treat opioid use disorder with the use of psychedelics. For a state like Louisiana, which is normally a very heavily prohibition style state, this is really good news. They're going to do these studies and finally, because we know these studies are going to show promising results.
A lot of veterans too. I love the veteran program. That's maybe they'll let a public come in and do like group therapy sessions from time to time, and be like, hi, how are you doing? I hope your trip was good.
Hilarious.
Yeah, that goes over to our next article here, and this is people leaving to go travel and trip. And FoxNews.com says psychedelic retreats explode into hot travel trend as experts say demand is growing. And psilocybin and ayahuasca retreats are legal in a number of destinations as report flags, risks, and warnings. By Ashley J. Millela from Fox News.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I mean, we've known about these retreats, but they're making mainstream news. Wellness retreats featuring spa treatments and yoga classes have long attracted travelers, but now a new trend is emerging: psychedelic retreats. These retreats are often structured travel experiences with participants using psychedelic substances such as psilocybin, ayahuasca, or other plant medicines. Hadass Alterman, a psychedelic medicine attorney in Washington, D.C., told Fox News Digital she's seen a rise in the popularity of these retreats. The paradigm could signal that the hard line between clinical interventions and all the other uses, spiritual, personal growth, recreational, is giving way to a spectrum where psychedelics serve people who aren't in crisis, but merely thrill-seeking either, she said. The retreats are usually held by facilitators, shamans, or therapists. They take place in destinations in which certain substances are legal or culturally accepted. Legality varies widely across the globe. Psilocybin truffles are sold in the Netherlands. Ayahuasca, a protected cultural heritage in Peru. Jamaica has no restrictions on psilocybin, Alterman said. Popular retreats operate in these permissive countries, as well as in Oregon and Colorado, where supervised psilocybin use is now legal under state law, she added. Celebrities and athletes have hopped on the trend, with NFL star Aaron Rodgers attending a few psychedelic retreats in South America and Costa Rica. Speaking at the Psychedelic Science 2023 conference in Colorado, Rodgers, who has accredited ayahuasca with helping him with his MVP award in 2020 and 2021, was enthusiastic about his experiences. We have the opportunity to change the conversation by dispelling these archaic myths about the dangers of them or the negative side effects or whatever might be, and start to share the actual wisdom and truth about it, Rogers said, as the New York Post reported. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's I think it's how we move this conversation forward. More people need to be out there comfortable talking about their own journeys, their spiritual journeys, their medicine journey, their ceremonies. So we bring this to people who need it, he also said. A report published in JAMA Psychiatry entitled Essentials of Important Consent to Psychedelic Medicine This then relayed concern about the use of psychedelics. The psychedelics have unique properties that complicate the informed consent process. They often produce intense subjective experiences that are difficult to explain, predict, or comprehend, especially for psychedelic native individuals, the author wrote in 2024 report. The report added that patients may not truly understand what they're agreeing to when using psychedelics, that there are 7 risks involved. Researchers say the risks are the possibility of a short and long-term perceptual disturbances, potential personality changes, and altered metaphysical beliefs, the limited role of reassuring physical touch, the potential for patient abuse or coercion, the role and risks of data collection, relevant practitioner disclosures, and interactive patient education and comprehensive assessment. Um, the authors added the effects can include profound perceptual changes or hallucinations, mood disturbances, paranoia, and altered sense of self-reality. Tom Figel, founder and CEO of Beyond, an ibogaine treatment clinic network focused on addiction, PTSD, depression, anxiety, primarily in Mexico, told Fox News. Digital that retreats have grown in popularity as people search for treatments that work for them. Oh, there's a Fox News digital. Oh, wait, I'm reading. What's emerging is fully licensed and medically supervised approach to help the brain and body create lasting change, delivered by physicians and nurses in a way that feels both rigorous and deeply human, he said. Mental health is now core to how people think about performance, relationships, and longevity, he said. There's a growing openness to approaches that don't just maintain the status quo, but help people actually move forward. People no longer want to numb or manage symptoms without medication. They want real, lasting change.
Yeah, for sure. San Francisco Bay Area based Fiegel said the demand is increasing for something that can create meaningful, durable change, result ranging from people who haven't found satisfactory relief in conventional care to high performing individuals and professionals focused on optimization. Fiegel said the wellness trend represents a shift from managing symptoms to restoring function, resilience, and sense of possibility. That was a cool article.
It is. It is. So much stuff is going cool this thing, like already.
Yeah.
First it's Louisiana, then there's a retreat, and now we're gonna jump into Kentucky, because guess what? On amp.kentucky.com, on the Herald Leader. Oh, got it. Click that X. The Kentucky legislature moving to research psychedelic drug to treat addiction, by Austin Horn.
Yeah, the Kentucky legislature is moving forward with a bill that would create a framework to fund and conduct clinical trials of an experimental psychedelic drug used to treat addiction. Senate Bill 77 from Senator Donald Douglas, Republican of Nicholasville, would set up a public-private partnership for development of the drug known as ibogaine. And the drug, which can cause highly unpleasant hallucinations and intense physiological symptoms, reportedly resolves many addiction and mental health issues when used under the supervision of a physician, which is interesting because it's not even legal to do that yet. So how do they even know that? Just saying. The bill also establishes a dedicated state ibogaine research and intellectual property fund, which would require matching private investments from a drug developer and ensures Kentucky shares in any resulting intellectual property revenues from the drug. Brian Hubbard, former chair of Kentucky's Opioid Abatement Advisory Commission, which is tasked with spending the state's hundreds of millions in opioid lawsuit settlement money, previously proposed $42 million in state dollars to fund research. His boss, then incoming Republican Attorney General Russell Coleman, did not share Hubbard's enthusiasm for investing in the experimental and currently illegal psychedelic. But so far, members of Kentucky legislature seem keen to set up the funding and trial framework for the drug. The initial version of Douglas's bill has allocated $21 million to effort, but the appropriation was struck from the bill before it passed the Senate in a 35-2 vote. Douglas is a longtime physician. Since leaving the commission, Hubbard moved on to a nonprofit, Americans for Ibogaine, and describes Ibogaine advocacy as his life's work. Last year, Hubbard successfully pushed Texas to fund research into the drug to the tune of $50 million. Similar legislation in Mississippi and West Virginia have been passed. Wow, so there's some stuff happening down there.
It is. The Hubbard, alongside prominent ex-politicians Rick Perry, former governor of Texas, and former U.S. Senator Kristen Sinema of Arizona, has helped popularize the drug in America throughout frequent media appearances. Last year, he and Perry appeared on Joe Rogan Experience, one of the country's most popular podcasts. Dr. Gene Loftus, a plastic surgeon from Northern Kentucky, was the primary witness on behalf of the bill in the House Veterans, Military Affairs, and Public Protection Committee. Public Protection Committee. Yeah, that did make sense when I first said it. On vote on Tuesday. Ibogaine treats all addiction, including cocaine, meth, alcohol, benzos, even nicotine. No, thank you. And especially opioids. It treats PTSD and is particularly effective in treating traumatic brain injury, which is disturbingly common among combat veterans and depression. Loftus said. Leftists advertised the bill as model legislation for the American Legislative Exchange Conference, the most prominent conservative state legislative group. She laid out a $300 million to $600 million process for the drug to eventually get Food and Drug Administration approval, which would require a multi-state effort, in which each participating state setting up its own public-private partnership along a single drug developer. Loftus did not name the developer. There are risks associated with the drug, including fatal heart arrhythmia, which part of the reason some University of Kentucky researchers warned against it in 2023 when Hubbard was championing the drug in Bluegrass State. Representative T.J. Roberts, a Republican in Burlington, said it's been an estimate that the cost of addiction in Kentucky is $95 billion, a huge price relative to whatever the state might put in for Ibogaine research, he said. Roberts also cited his late father's passing as part of the reason for his yes vote on the bill. Ooh, wow.
Yeah. I understand the concern about cardiac arrest, but I have a concern about cardiac arrests that are arising out of something else. Drug addiction is what the cause of my dad's cardiac arrest. The traditional treatments didn't work. This is a new hope for people who are going through something that is devastating our communities in the Commonwealth, Roberts said. SB 77 passed through the committee with all the Republicans voting yes and 2 Democrats voting no. A similar bill from Douglas was introduced into the Senate last year, but did not move. So that's really cool. It looks like they're moving forward. We'll have to see what happens there.
See, now, like, again, that's with all this stuff, I understand. There's abstinence America. There's pissed off America that, like, family people whose loved ones went through this drug therapy last time with the opioids that were going to heal them. And then their loved ones got addicted to that and it just didn't help. And then they came out with another opioid that was supposed to help better than the first opioid, and that didn't help. And so, America's burnt out, and Kentucky didn't let it through. So now a lot of a lot of states are hurting right now for money. If they're opening these because it's going to bring their state a little extra income, I want these states to relook at it, because again, these, the money should, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. All these states are talking about it, but are they really trying to help the people or just trying to get the money?
Right. To me, it comes down to money. And what's really sad about the whole thing in the grand scheme of things is that all these states are going to use that ibogaine or whatever psychedelic to their advantage. Yet the traditional tribes who brought it forward to our communities are not going to see a penny in the end, which is absolutely sad. Tribes in Africa, like the Batwiti tribe with ibogaine, you bet your bottom dollar these states that are going to legalize it and develop a drug out of it are going to exploit that drug that was brought forward by these tribes in a traditional sense. And I guarantee you those pharmaceutical companies aren't going to give any money to the so-called creator of the medicine, right? So it's interesting. It does come down to money, and they're going to exploit it. But is it going to help a lot of people? Absolutely. So I don't know in the grand scheme of things where I stand on all that, but something has to change. What we're doing currently with the opioid crisis in every country right now is not working. Same with the mental health realm of things. It's not working. So it's time for some change.
Amen. Amen. And with that, it's medication time.
That's right, folks. It's time to pay some bills. So stay tuned for a word from some of our amazing sponsors, and then we'll return with more articles Bufo has chosen making mainstream media news.
Back in 4 minutes and 20 seconds here on Psychedelic Reporters on an OK Network.
Hi, my name is John Mark, aka Sublimator Warrior, and I would like to welcome you to Smoke Signal in Tyndinaga.
One dab make your whole dome drip sweat. One dab make the homies all dip set. One dab, only really need one dab. One dab.
Smoke Signal is a medical dispensary where you can get all your products and needs.
Vaping a whole bunch. Might just start laying off the blunts. God. Ooey, ooey, gooey, that's a sticky dab. Sticky dab. Might just have to put this one on Instagram. Go and hold it in, feel it in your ribs.
So come and check us out in Tyndinaga. 55 Highway 49 in Tyndonega. It's on the res, and we're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week.
Join us for NOK Network monthly specials, 12 months a year, movie nights, spotlights on entertainment, and live on location coverage. Stay up to date about upcoming programming by subscribing to NOK Network on Rumble, YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Twitch, and Facebook. Check out our webpage at www.noknetwork.com.
Dirty Dave, award-winning cultivator for over 4 decades. Dirty Dave, prized genetics fueled by advanced nutrients, original OG organics.
Everybody must get stoned. Yeah, well, they stone you when you're walking down the street. They stone you when you're trying.
Dirty Dave, award-winning products available at these fine establishments.
But I would not feel so alone.
Ask your shop to carry Dirty Dave. Contact us at dirtiesdoggies@gmail.com.
Welcome back to the show in our regular program.
And we're back from our medication session live here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network.
And we have another set of stories coming at you from the realm of psychedelic medicine. So let's get at it. Oh man, I almost got like stage fright for a second. It was like, okay. So our next article comes from SciPost.org. And it's got first direct comparison of MDMA and MDMA and MDA reveals distinct psychedelic differences. So, and by Katrina Petrova.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Researchers have directly compared the physical and psychological effects of the psychoactive drug MDMA and its chemical cousin MDMA and its chemical cousin MDA in human volunteers for the first time. The results showed that MDA produces a longer lasting therapeutic experience with more visual distortions and adverse reactions. These outcomes suggest MDA may be less suited than the standard MDMA for therapeutic use. The study was published in the journal Neuropsychopharmacology. MDMA is widely known synthetic compound that promotes strong feelings of empathy, trust, and interpersonal connection. Because it reliably induces these emotional states, medical professionals are investigating the substance as a medication for psychotherapy in patients suffering with post-traumatic stress disorder. When a person consumes MDMA, their body breaks the molecule down into several secondary chemicals. One of these breakdown products is a molecule called MDA. MDA is psychoactive in its own right and has a history of limited psychiatric exploration. The Both substances fall into a broad category of drugs known as entactogens, which roughly translates to touching within. Pharmacologically, both drugs work by releasing signaling chemicals into the brain, including serotonin and dopamine. Laboratory models show that MDA targets dopamine slightly more aggressively than MDMA does. It also exhibits a 10-fold higher activation of a specific serotonin receptor known to drive the subjective effects of classic psychedelics. Despite these known molecular differences, researchers had never evaluated the two drugs side by side in controlled human setting. Clinical pharmacologist Isabel Strootman at the University Hospital Basel in Switzerland and her colleagues sought to map these distinctions, clarifying how these chemicals operate in the body could guide future clinical decisions. The research team also wanted to test a new method for delivering these drugs. Fast-acting stimulants carry a high risk of abuse because they can cause rapid rush of euphoria. To slow the absorption of these drugs, the researchers created specialized versions by chemically attaching an amino acid called lysine to the standard MDMA and MDA molecules. Interesting.
Yeah. These combined molecules act as inactive carriers known as prodrugs, which is the body must metabolize before the active drug can enter the bloodstream. This slow release strategy is already in prescription medications for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder to lower their abuse potential. To carry out the investigation, Strauman and her colleagues recruited 23 healthy adult volunteers. The group consisted of 12 women and 11 men. Each participant attended 5 different 13-hour testing sessions separated by at least 2 weeks. And I forgot to say they were healthy adult volunteers. During these sessions, the participants received 1 or 5 identical-looking capsules. The options included a placebo, a standard recreational dose of MDMA, and a chemically equivalent dose of MDA, the lysine attached version of MDMA, the lysine attached version of MDA. The trial used a double-blind design, meaning neither the participants nor the observing researchers knew which capsule was administered on any given day. After taking the pill, each volunteer stayed in a quiet hospital room throughout the day. The research team repeatedly measured the participants' blood pressure, pupil size, heart rate, body temperature. The researchers also asked the volunteers to rate their subjective, emotional, and physical experiences on number visual scales. Additionally, the team drew blood to track drug concentrations and hormone levels. They specifically looked for oxytocin, a hormone heavily associated with social bonding and trust. MDMA is known to trigger a massive release of oxytocin, which scientists suspect plays a role in therapeutic benefit because oxytocin can be volatile to measure. Volatile to measure. The researchers also tracked a stable carrier protein called neurophysin. They gathered the data showed that MDMA produced a longer active, subjectively more intense experiences than MDMA. So, while the psychological effects of MDMA lasted about 4 hours, for the average participant, the MDA effects lingered for more than 6 hours. MDA research reached its peak effect in the body at the same 2-hour mark as MDMA. Ooh, a lot of M and A and M&Ms.
Yeah, participants reported the MDA caused stronger stimulant effects and provoked more visual distortions than its famous counterpart. The volunteers also experienced more fear and bad drug experiences while under the influence of MDA. Subacute adverse effects in the days following the session, such as headache, exhaustion, and a lack of appetite, were slightly more prevalent after MDA use. Both chemicals produced comparable increased in body temperature, heart rate, pupil size, and blood pressure. As expected, MDMA triggered a heavy release of oxytocin. The researchers found that MDA also increased circulating levels of oxytocin and its carrier protein, doing so slightly more intensely than MDMA. When testing the slower released prodrug version, the researchers encountered a partial success. The lysine attached MDA pill functioned exactly as intended. It delayed the onset of the drug's effect by roughly an hour and pushed the peak subjective experience further out in time while keeping physiological responses similar to standard MDA. The lysine attached MDMA pill produced absolutely no physical or psychological effects. Blood tests confirmed that the participants' bodies were completely unable to separate the active MDMA from the lysine molecule. The researchers suspect the highly specific chemical shape of the MDMA compound prevented digestion enzymes from completing the process. Because the researchers expected the lysine attached MDMA to work, this biological failure accidentally created a second placebo session for the participants. The volunteers reported greater subjective drug experiences during the second unexpected placebo day than they did during their scheduled placebo session. They reported feeling elevated and stimulated simply because they anticipated taking a mind-altering substance. This observation highlights the enormous power of expectation in psychiatric research. The physical and emotional shifts caused by expectant belief can easily cross over into an interpretation of clinical results. The researchers noted that taking a placebo may limit the scientific utility of a controlled group in psychedelic trials. The researchers also observed a minor difference in how certain groups process the drug. Female participants reported slightly more extreme visuals and time alterations than male participants. Women also reported more subacute adverse effects in the days following the MDA sessions. Participants' genetics also played a role in drug clearance rates. Individuals with specific variations of the CYP2D6 liver enzyme cleared the active chemical from their systems at a slower rate. These poor metabolizers experienced a longer elimination half-life for the drug and reported more exhaustion in the days following the study than participants with typical liver enzymes. The specific trial features a few limitations that warrant attention in future studies. The researchers only tested a single dose of each substance. It remains entirely unclear how higher or lower amounts might shift the balance of prosocial and adverse effects. The study also took place in a sterile clinical environment using healthy volunteers. People experiencing active psychiatric conditions may respond to the visuals and emotional shifts of these substances in very different ways. Additionally, the trial used chemical mixtures rather than isolated drug variants, which can sometimes produce slightly distinct outcomes based on how they bind to the brain's receptors. Future research will likely focus on tweaking the chemical structure of these molecules to maximize therapeutic benefits while minimizing adverse physical reactions. For now, the clinical data point to standard MDMA holding a more favorable psychological profile than its longer-acting chemical cousin. Wow, that's interesting.
Sure is.
Yeah,
Holy cow, man.
MDA is what they were using in the 70s and 80s. So like it was like the first variation, and then MDMA came out.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Kim sent me that message. I had to share that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. No. Well, in the in the whatever's to cleanness, really, and that I really like that. To be honest with you, when I was younger, we abused those type of medications because of the euphoric medication. It wasn't done in a, I guess, a microdose setting. It was woo, yum, 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 and it was like woo. I don't know, as we get older, you're looking at these medicines for help being not as recreational as when you once were younger.
Definitely.
So that brings us to our last article for the day, the CPR News. How one Colorado woman discovered the benefits of psychedelics and built a company. And this is from CPR.org by Andrea Dukakis. Well, look at those mushrooms.
Oh, those are so pretty. As Colorado opens up the therapeutic use of psychedelics, healing centers where people can undergo psilocybin-assisted therapy are cropping up around the state, as are companies that grow and process psychedelic mushrooms. Philutions, a startup based in the Vail Valley, was among the first to grow and produce the drug for Colorado's licensed healing centers. Philutions founder and CEO Rhonda DeSantis sees the business as a calling. She said she was introduced to the healing powers of psychedelics in the midst of a lengthy custody battle with her ex-husband. After having to retell the same story to the courts multiple times, I had some pretty raw trauma-triggered exposures, recounted DeSantis. And I have a very dear friend that says, come and take a small dose with me. And I did take that small dose, and it took an instant, and I could take a breath for the first time in over a year. DeSantis said she retells the same small dose, or repeated the same dose 3 times more over the course of a year. And by the end of that, my ex-husband showed up at an event for my child, and I walked past him and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" and walked right on by. And then I got about 10 feet from him and went, "Oh, I don't care." And it was such a relief and a sigh of like, "Oh, this works." DeSantis said the experience changed the course of her life. It was really that moment that I went, I think this psilocybin really does something, and I need to bring it to the world as much as I can, she said. DeSantis became a licensed psychedelic facilitator, that is, a therapist who works with people during guided psychedelic trips. She started researching how to grow and manufacture psychedelic mushrooms. Her research coincided with Colorado's new law allowing people to take the drug at licensed healing centers in the state. And about a year ago, DeSantis started building out that company. Philutions is tucked away in a nondescript office building. It operates a highly sterile environment with strict rules to avoid contamination. Visitors are required to wear full body suits and masks before entering the cultivation and manufacturing rooms. The company's name is a play on the word psilocybin or psilocin, which triggers the psychedelic compound of magic mushrooms. Very cool.
It is. The cultivation room where the mushrooms are grown is organized by stages of the mushroom growth, beginning with mycelium, which is the root-like part of the mushroom. It grows neatly labeled glass jars with a golden colored liquid, which makes the room bear some resemblance to the laboratory of a mad scientist, albeit sterile and highly organized one. Inside the glass jars are what look vaguely like cotton balls floating around, which is the start of mycelium growing. After that stage, they're transformed into a container of grain where they grow further before being mixed into a compost, often formed in blocks. The mushrooms sprout from the blocks and begin to look like mushroom one might see in the wild, although these are hallucinogenic ones. The 17 mushroom varieties Psylutions grows have descriptive names like blue ghost, which has a blue ghost-like skirt and a penis envy, which distinctively phallic shape. If you don't know what phallic means, don't look it up on the interweb in public. Your screen will be dead. After they're harvested, they are dried and ground to a fine powder. They're homogenized and tested. DeSantis says the process is critically since each mushroom, even those of the same strain, can have different amounts of psilocybin. We've seen one mushroom pin grow next to another mushroom, where one has 30 milligrams in it, and the other one has 4. And so when people dose in the whole body mushrooms, you get an estimate of what your dose could be. But there is no precision dosing. Colorado's legal framework requires extensive state testing to ensure dosing is accurate. The company also does its own testing. Once the tests are complete, the powder are inserted into capsules and mixed into gummies, teas, and company-made chocolate truffles. Psylution products can be sold to Colorado licensed healing centers, DeSantis said. Some strains are tailored to specific populations, like the one called Purple Envy. This is ideal for complex PTSD, trauma patients, sexual assault survivors, domestic violence victims, as well as anyone who has had long-standing trauma, said DeSantis. But it also works for people who have anxiety and depression. Some clinical studies have shown psilocybin-assisted therapy may also help ease the fear of death in terminally ill patients. So Psylutions has developed a strain targeted to people with chronic or terminal illness. They're dealing with only grief of loss of life they had. Their often experiences great pain, she said. There's lots of anxiety about the future, and there's a lot of depression that comes with it. Oh, wow.
DeSantis acknowledges that some people may be apprehensive about taking a dose of psilocybin. Maybe they had some experience back in the day and had a bad trip, potentially, she said. But in the legal setting, it's actually quite safe and controlled. DeSantis said her hope is that all companies in the psychedelic space meet her high bar that any drug manufacturer is required to meet. We really want to make sure that we're moving psilocybin into the medical realm and not just something that has grown in someone's basement next to their dirty tennis shoes or in someone's garage in a tent, she said. While the company aims to keep cost of the drug down, DeSantis said it's a challenge due to the time and money required to grow, manufacture, and test the product. The cost of a course of therapy at a healing center, which involves hours of time with a trained therapist, can cost between a few $1,000s up to $10,000, DeSantis said. But she said there are discounts available for certain patient populations that might not be able to afford extensive therapy. And again, we come back to it needs to be accessible for everyone.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Accessibility is going to be key in treating people. I mean, $10,000. I don't got $10,000 to go and have a treatment. So how does the average like when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, most people who are suffering with anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, opioid use disorders, all of these things don't have 10 grand kicking around in their back pocket to just go down to the nearest healing center and take some mushrooms. It's not going to happen.
No.
And those are the patients we're trying to reach.
Right. Well, and now, yeah, one thing with that is is if it passes through the FDA, there's chances some insurances are going to pick up this as a psychological advancement. But I mean, how long is that going to take?
Right. Again, they need to move faster on this and get it moving for everyone.
I agree. And that brings us to thank you for joining us here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network and for tuning in to our video podcast on NOK Network's Rumble and YouTube pages, as well as our social media sites.
That's right, folks. We hope you've enjoyed your update today on mainstream media coverage of psychedelic news advancements from around the globe.
Many thanks to our sponsors, to my joint hosts, Tara Simpson, and to Buffalo Various, and to Kim Cooper helping us present the news on here through the in the back. She's back there smoking dab. Well, and for where was I? For she and to and to you. I got a point. You, our listeners, for joining each week on Psychedelic Tuesday. Let's hear from Dead Ringer again from the Kirkland Lake. On our way out. Woo, woo, woo. I'm looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of